Hello, everybody. I'm George from Ireland. Well, thank you for coming back to my channel, commenting on this United States and Israeli war against Iran. Nobody's formally named it, and I know there was that so-called 12-day war last summer of Israeli aerial attacks against Iran. What can we call it? Like the Second Gulf War, the Middle East War, because it involves a country very far away from the region. That's the USA. It's not easy to come up with a geographical name for it, and now it appears the United Kingdom is in it as well. These Gulf Arab countries, I think, not attacking Iran, but fending off Iranian drones and so on. So the major development today was the sinking of that Iranian warship. He thinks it was a destroyer off the coast of Sri Lanka. So hundreds of miles from the war zone in international waters, which is contentious. Some say, well, freedom of navigation, you shouldn't have sunk it there, only if it was in a country's territorial waters, and so on. So sunk by a torpedo fired by a United States Navy submarine. The first time a ship has been sunk by a submarine since 1982. So that last time it was the Argentine warship, the Belgrano, sunk by the British Royal Naval submarine HMS Conqueror. I remember seeing a interview with the captain saying he's very reluctant to sink it. One sailor to another, he doesn't want to kill fellow sailors, even there's an undeclared war on, but the order came in from Northwood, headquarters of the Royal Navy, sink it. He obeyed orders, fired those hunter-killer torpedoes and sank it. Anyway, so 130 sailors on board, only 32 of them rescued by the Sri Lankans, some of them confirmed dead, others missing, and so on. So obviously, hats off to the Sri Lankan Navy for being humanitarian and following this law of the sea and saving these Iranian sailors. They'll be interned for the duration of the war. So Donald J. Trump is boasting that most of the Iranian Navy has been sent to Davy Jones's locker. And indeed, that seems to be true. Therefore, that the Persian Gulf, or the Arabian Gulf, as some prefer to call it, is comprehensively cleared of the Iranian Navy. Notice the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has got its own vessels, but most of those have gone to the bottom of the sea as well. But Iran can still fire drones and missiles and so across there. The Straits of Hormuz attacking a lot of shipping in the Straits of Hormuz. About 20% of the world's seaborne oil goes through there, and some of the world's gas as well, liquefied natural gas. Incidentally, some of the world's oil doesn't go by sea, goes by pipelines. So it's not quite as high as 20% of the world's oil supply. But yeah, it's been bad for stock markets, oil prices, and gas prices are up. Obviously, if you're selling those, maybe it's a bonanza, so long as you have to export it through that route. But for everybody else, almost everything we do relies on energy. Even this video, that's electricity. Things you buy, services, goods you purchase are either produced using electricity, using energy, oil, often oil, gas, coal, whatever, or transported, or the shop uses lights, and so on. So the price of everything going up in the short term. It's redolent to the oil shock of 1973, when the Gulf Arab countries just stopped producing oil for a few months to punish Western countries for supporting Israel in that Yom Kippur war, and quadrupled the oil price in a few years, which is a really good news for the Soviet Union, the main predecessor state of the Russian Federation, as Putin likes to remind us. So yeah, I mean, major successes for the United States, Israel, and so on. And yes, there have been some Iranian drones and missiles striking Gulf Arab countries, causing not very much damage. 6 U.S. military personnel confirmed killed so far. Those 3 U.S. Air Force jets shot down by the Kuwaitis in a case of misidentification. Is it 12 Israelis killed so far? I mean, it seems to be hundreds of Iranians killed, mostly civilians. The funeral today for all those little girls killed in that school, an appalling atrocity. Anyway, I still say stop the war. Those drones fired at the British base on Cyprus, RAF Delekia, RAF Akrotiri, who fired them? Everyone's saying it's Iran. It might have been Iran. I don't know. But why would they do that? It just doesn't make sense. They don't have a lot of munitions. They do not need more enemies. The United Kingdom say, we're staying out of this. We're not going to participate even indirectly. No, the United States military is not allowed to use RAF Fairford to launch these attacks, which is a very long runway that they need for certain planes, or indeed RAF Diego Garcia in the Chagos Islands, and so on. So why on earth would the Iranians provoke the United Kingdom? So could it be that another country, particularly Israel, committed a false flag attack on Cyprus And they couldn't have done better, as in, yes, they were there, easily shot down, didn't injure a single person. That's just a theory. I've no idea if it's true or not, but I've heard that one. Might be nonsense, and so on. Now, so Iran was not acting in a rational way, but there's partly is anybody in control in Iran? Ali Khamenei's been killed. You know, the head of the army, the head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, a lot of top officials have been taken out. So President Pezeshkian is in hiding. And the thing is, speaking to people who are familiar with such matters, is therefore he's probably not going to communicate by phone, by internet, by any electronic means, because once he does that, he can be located. The Israelis and the Americans are to track him, and that will be signing his death warrant. So have to actually meet in person, go to people, handwritten letters like Hamas before 7th of October. Yeah, snail mail, it's a lot slower, but it's almost impossible to intercept, and therefore you can't find him, so you can't kill him. And so is anybody giving orders, or these military units, the military commanders just make it up as they go along? There is no grand strategy, a strategy of chaos. And the one thing about taking out leaders is nobody can surrender, have the authority to negotiate. But one of the reasons the Americans didn't want to kill Hirohito in the Second World War, because nobody else could order surrender and have it obeyed. You killed him, even his son Akihito had to be sworn in as emperor. He had to give the order, and so on. So yeah, the Iranians have really been pushed to the wall. Are they going to try to go down in flames with martyrdom and so on? So Trump seems to be very satisfied the way things are going, saying it will be over by Easter, a bit like this First World War, over by Christmas. 5 weeks to go. But who'll run out of munitions first? And some of these Patriots and so on, these defenses for shooting down incoming missiles and so on, are very, very expensive, much more expensive than the Iranian Shahed drones. Now, the Iranians decided mostly not to target Israel, because the Iron Dome is about 99% effective. Iron Dome is almost impregnable. And Israel's invaded Lebanon, taken a few kilometers into Lebanon. They say strategic points to protect that. But, you know, we know that they're stealing land all the time in the West Bank and in Syria and so on. It's just ultra aggressive. Netanyahu never saw a war he didn't like. He glories in slaughter. He's an absolute bloodthirsty monster. So yeah, he's far more murderous than Khamenei, especially proportionate to the population of Gaza. And I do not weep for Khamenei one bit. But you know, Iranians abroad, very mixed feelings. Those are very anti-regime. They don't feel sorry for Khamenei. But what about the ordinary Iranian soldiers and sailors? They're not bad people, most of them. What about the hundreds of Iranian civilians they've killed? And we've only just started. So, but if one oil tanker is sunk, that could be so much of a terrible oil slick, all these flames and things like that. You know, Qatar has stopped producing liquid natural gas. No idea when that's going to come back online. The biggest oil refinery in the world, Ras Tanura, where I used to live as a child, that's been blown up, and these people could be killed. And obviously, some of these people are petrochemical engineers, very, very difficult to recruit and replace. And some say, bugger this for a game of soldiers. I'm out of the Middle East. I'm going to find very lucrative employment elsewhere. So we've no idea when world aviation will get back to normal. Now, Emirates, a few other airlines, they have started flying just a bit. Dubai Airport went back to about 1% of scheduled departures, ramping up to, you know, taking a little bit of risk. Passengers, are you willing to run the risk? But obviously, if one of those planes gets shot down, that could be hundreds of people killed. You think of reputational damage. An A380, you destroy it on the ground, even though passengers in it, those things cost about $450 million. It'll take a very, very long time for Dubai and Doha to recover their reputations as a safe place to fly to and from. If you think about holidays at the back end of this year, will this war be going on? I don't know. If even one drone is fired a week, the war isn't quite over. So the Iranians might say, we need to teach the Americans a very bloody lesson. Those Iranians have some enriched uranium, say, well, we've got to use it because we've been attacked again and again and again, and we've got to make that into a nuclear bomb as fast as possible. That is the only solution, and set it off in Israel or the United States, even a dirty bomb in a suitcase, something like that. So this is horrific. It's all Trump and Netanyahu's fault. I mean, as for the United Kingdom getting involved, I think mistake. And even though those drones were fired by Iran, the United Kingdom could easily just keep shooting them down. It wasn't a serious threat. Maybe they would land eventually, wound someone, eventually even kill someone. But honestly, compare that to how many Britons are going to get killed, they get involved in this war. And I hear this story that, you know, that MI5 in the United Kingdom unmasked at least 20 Iranian terrorist plots in the UK last year. Is that true? I mean, they can invent as many bogeymen as they like. I don't know. It might be true. I have my doubts. This hostility towards Iran really is excessive. And yes, it's a barbarous regime, but it just doesn't tend to interfere with faraway countries. I see how diminished Iran is in puissance in the last few years. Think back a decade. It had very cordial relations with Iraq, the Iraqi government of Shia domination there, and Iranian-backed militias roaming the country. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was present. Likewise, they were in Syria. Assad was their man, seemed to be winning the civil war at points. Likewise, and in Lebanon, Hezbollah was probably the most potent force, and so forth. And the Houthi rebels were doing quite well in Yemen, and their influence could have gone even further. And Armenia was in a stronger position than it is today versus their foe Azerbaijan, and they had amicable relations with Turkey. When the Pakistan People's Party, the Bhutto dynasty, was in office in Pakistan, Iran had good relations with them, and Qatar had good relations with them. Of necessity, the Qataris had to forge a more cooperative relationship with Iran when they're blockaded by Saudi Arabia and so on. And you look where they are now on the back foot, and that's really all lost. But the regime may keep going. I think Trump and Netanyahu may have underestimated the resilience of the Iranian people, and they've been suffering a lot due to sanctions and so on. The world will be pleading for Israel and the United States to end this war because they want reasonable oil prices. They want world aviation to go back to normal. Because remember, a lot of Western airlines sanctioning Russia and Belarus, they can't fly over Russian and Belarusian Russian airspace. So had to go to the south of that to go from Europe or whatever to the Far East and back. And now in the Middle East, a lot of that's closed. The air corridors from Turkey over, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, over the Caspian Sea onto Turkmenistan or Kazakhstan and so on, and around that way to the Far East. And there are only so many planes can go through there at a time. So what happens next? The Iranians letting some Chinese tankers bound for China through. It seems to be the Iranians are hitting all sorts of tankers otherwise to make the world pay a very, very heavy price and pressurize Donald J. Trump to stop. And I admire Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, for standing up to Donald Trump, saying, we don't take orders from Uncle Sam. So I'm against this war. There was no United Nations Security Council resolution authorizing this war. You see how careful George W. Bush was to try and do that. I mean, he also had UN Security Council resolutions in 2003, trying to get yet another one in March 2003, didn't quite make it. Trump has not even attempted to do that, or a UN General Assembly resolution. So without international support, without domestic support, most Americans are not in favor of this war, not necessarily against someone neutral, but it's a clear minority, like about 35% are in favor, and it's only going to go down. And likewise in the United Kingdom. So no, there wasn't a reason for this. There's no achievable aim. It may not result in regime change. The regime might be worse than the one you got now. And Trump is even talking about a military coup within that to bring to power a dictator who's more amenable to the United States. Now that might happen, and that might not be the worst outcome rather than this going on forever. But, just don't think it's going to be a democracy, anything like that. So, yeah, this is a war of choice. This is a war imposed on Iran by Tel Aviv and Washington, D.C. So I want no part of it. They have aggressed Iran. So, yeah, it's heartbreaking. You think of all the innocent people in Iran and elsewhere who are being killed by Netanyahu and Trump. And you see how Trump says they're destabilizing the region. He's destabilizing the region. And look what it's done to the world economy, that they're aggressive. He's aggressive. He's the terrorist. It's just monstrous. Okay, stop the war now.